Welcome to the C-Suite, or I would like to rebrand today as the Customer Suite. I am joined today by a very special guest, Jennifer Koen, the Chief Customer Officer here at DevHub. And today we are talking about the customer. So here's what's messed up.
Yeah.
Okay, right? We're a 17-year-old company for those who are just catching up. And, we just went to breakfast. And we're talking about at what stage is the customer in theory the most important, right? And so when you first start out, you're like, oh, I need to find a customer to make money. I need to find out if the product fits with the customer, right? So far, is that true when most people start out? Like, how many people do you think start out and think it's 100% about the customer, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, versus like, I built something that might solve a problem and now I want to figure out if people pay for it. I almost don't care who the person is,
Yeah, I think it's more that.
Right. So, and again, what's messed up? Like the phase that we're sort of at right now, and we can reflect on that in a second. Like I always think back, a lot of times when I do a podcast or a video, I always try to think of where we were 17 years ago. Right? Which is like, again, an investor or someone more senior than I was at 22, 23 years old would be like, it's all about the customer. It's all about the customer. But like when you start to get to the motion of the business, you're trying to make payroll. You're trying to raise your next fundraising round. Like, I don't know how much the customer is at the forefront of what it is, of how important that customer really is to where you ultimately want to go. And you just kind of keep skipping over it. And eventually, at what point do you get to the place, between, I wrote it down, early years, mid years, and high growth? Based on what I said, is there anything you can clean up there?
I don't know if I can clean that up. What are you trying to get at, Mark?
So again, so it's like, what could I have told ourselves earlier on that the customer was way more important, that regardless of trying to make payroll, regardless of trying to raise more money, regardless of trying to perfect the product, that get more tight with who the customer is so that you can scale more quickly than, eventually now we are, right? Literally after 17 years, 2 years ago to make the effort, oh my God, the customer is everything.
Yep.
Like, oh, that's why we feel more free today. Why we're flying everyone in. It's like, tomorrow we're going to play a video for everyone in the company. Like, here's what the customer sentiment is of a very successful launch. Like, again, I always think about when I do these things, what could I have told myself to focus more on the customer earlier on than just like solving the lighter problems of the day, which again, at that time were, again, payroll and a million other things, right? Trying to raise more money.
I can give you a simple answer.
What is it?
I think, I say it a lot, but I think especially in tech and subscription-based models.
Yeah, no, that's huge. Again, yes. Good context there.
Yeah, I think.
Because that is a different game than like, we built a cool...
Yeah.
I don't know if it is.
I think a lot of people get caught into the initial sales, right? So they're looking at the sales today and they're not looking at the sales tomorrow, which the sales tomorrow is your customers and retaining them. So I think that's like the most simple one, right? You can push tons of people in the door and, your revenue might look great from your AE or your sales team, but if you're not taking care of the revenue of tomorrow, which is really customer success and how you're treating the customer, you can be in a really bad place, right? And then really customers at the end of the day are going to be the ones that are really going to bring forward your growth.
Okay, I'm going to admit
like
something.
That little simple thing?
Well, I don't know. I'm going to go, because
You
again,
go
hearing you, because again, like I look at you like you own the customer relationship right now at DevHub at least, and again, other roles that you've played. I wrote down the word just now, fear, right? I had this weird fear, like I don't want to bother the customer either, right? Like we've sold the customer. I don't want to go ask them, like, can I get a review at the lowest end, right? What did you like about us? Like, I've had this weird fear. Now I don't feel it as much because, again, it's probably just time. But again, if I'm trying to save somebody that time, every marketing person we brought in here, every salesperson we brought in here is like, well, I'm going to talk to your customer. I want to talk to your customers. Like, no. Don't bother them. Don't bother them. Or now's not a good time to reach out to them. Is there anything in that?
Yeah. I think there's a level of where you don't want to berate them so much that it looks like it's only in the best interest of you growing your company. But I would say if you've got really happy customers, it's going to be natural, right? Which I would say, again, we're not talking about that right this second, but we're seeing with DevHub right now, there is a natural referenceability for the customers because they're happy, right? So happy customers are going to have no problem giving you references, no problem giving you feedback. And it really is about that intimate relationship we have with them, but with the lines of like they've got a business to run, so you don't want to impact their business with your business, but that you want to be that strategic partner where you fit in. So I think if you're fitting in right as that strategic partner, it's going to come naturally.
So again, since you set it up nicely when you said like software as a service, I guess technical.
Yeah, it's
services.
it's not transactional. We're not in a transactional relationship.
There's an ongoing license, right? So they're paying regardless. It wasn't like a one and done. My question would be, where in the process do you tee up to get that feedback from a customer? Or is it like multiple touches? Again, I don't want to tee up my own answer, but is it like that?
I think there's a few. I think one is, and this is not totally answering your question, but I'll throw it out there. I think the first 30 days are so critical to a relationship. First 30 days are make or break. No, first 30 days after contract signature.
Oh, wow.
Okay. That's going to set the stage for the rest of your relationship. So if you get them feeling good in that first 30 days, you've already hit one check mark. I think when you can start asking for tangible feedback or help is after you've had some proof point. So whether that is after launch and you've proven that you can seamlessly launch them, you've done a lot of the things that you've promised, or you've done all the things that you've promised and even more, then it's natural. If they've come on board and had a rocky start, they don't have a relationship with you, yeah, maybe you get them onto your platform and then you ask them for stuff. I mean, good luck. You're going to have an uphill battle. They're also going to be a difficult customer through the customer success relationship to renewal. You've already set the stage on your engagement. So to me, it's always that first 30 days is telling, and then what you do from there kind of continues to set the stage.
How important is the product to having a engaged customer?
I think it depends what product you have and how that the reliability
software service lens.
If it's in this industry,
we're not playing like consumer. We're not doing consumer right now.
Yeah. I'd say it's way less of a focal point. Right.
Really?
It's really the service model, especially in franchising, right? Like you've got one, if you're on the franchisor side, you've got credibility. Your credibility is on the line. Then you've got an entire network that you've got to ensure that you've guided and you've picked best in class for. And then obviously you've got all the different franchisees. So it's a whole different thing. It really becomes a service and strategic model at that point. Now you do need to have the tech doing what it said it was going to do, whether it's at scale or whether we're websites. So obviously we've got best in class from the SEO perspective, stuff like we nail those things, but it's less of a reliability on the tech than it is the partnership. So, and I've lived it on both sides, right? I mean, I was that customer for many, many years. I've got some, whoever may listen to this could have been my CSM that would be happy to probably get on a podcast, but
customer success manager. That's what
I think it's definitely more the strategic partnership in my experience.
Yeah. I mean, I've said sometimes the best tech doesn't always win.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it is multifaceted beyond just the, again, customer. So I also think it's a sales marketing effort, but this is not a sales marketing episode. This is a customer centric episode. So one of the things that we've prided ourselves on, and you tell me into this might be a layup also, but nonetheless, like the idea that we always say we have like a customer feedback loop in terms of where even the product goes. How is that baked into the overall relationship?
Well, a couple of ways. I mean, again, if you've got the really good relationship, you know what success looks like. Maybe that's the way to put it. You need to know what your customer's success looks like. If you understand that, you either already know gaps or opportunities, whether you can fill them or not. The other would be, again, having that good relationship, trusted relationship where, one, you're giving feedback, they're giving feedback. And if it is product related or if you can solve for it, that ends up being on the vendor side a prioritization piece. Or again, if you're tracking it, there's tracking mechanisms. But I think the feedback loop's huge, both from how you're giving service, right? Are there ways we can improve here? Are there workflows on their side that we could better fit into? So that's kind of continuous. And then, like the whole product piece, right? And that can be a bigger mountain to climb depending on what type of product you have and how many customers you have. But I think if you want to have that really good customer relationship and ongoing partnership for years to come, there is obviously an ongoing kind of innovation piece too that you've got to kind of match up, right? Like typically the customer is going to continue to grow and innovate on their side. And so you've got to kind of do that alongside them.
So real quick, I don't know if this is like a dreaded question, right? But the idea of a QBR, quarterly business review, important, not important, a formality? Like, how do you bake it into your org? Side of the org.
It should be important. If not, it becomes a formality and a checkbox. Again, I think it depends on how the relationship you have with the customer. If hopefully they're seeing stuff on a cadence that doesn't have to be so baked into a quarterly business review. But I think the QBRs give you a good time to kind of reflect, look back, see where you can improve on both sides. And then again, I think from our perspective, if we're looking at the vendor side, is, it really gives you the time to kind of showcase, I think, more value in a little bit more of a, obviously, tangible, concise way, invite some other stakeholders that maybe aren't your day-to-day into the mix so that they've got, the ability to see what you're doing, what your progress you're helping make. And then I think also it's where you can really have a focused learnings of what your customers got coming on the horizon. What do they got for the next quarter? How do you bake that into a success plan or continue to innovate? So I think they're important, but I think they can be done poorly and then they become just a checkbox. And I've seen it both ways. In my past, we've ran very strategic QBRs that are super impactful to where the customer is waiting for it. They can't wait for QBRs, but I've also seen it to where you have such a fragmented relationship that the QBRs are either confusing or if you've got a customer success manager or someone on the other side that actually can't storytell and articulate can become a problem. But to answer your question, I think they are super important. So, and it doesn't have to be quarterly. It could be monthly. It could be weekly. I think it's how are you showing value? Quarterly has kind of always been the industry standard, but
the reason why I wanted to do this episode is about the customer, right? Is when did customer success become a thing? And is customer success the same as customer service, customer satisfaction? Is customer success purely like a tech thing? Like, when did customer success become like its own aspect of a tech play, for lack of a better?
I mean, it's definitely not new. I think the CSM, that lingo, all that, I think, was more tech driven. But, even when I was on the customer side, I was on a non-tech business, right? Mm-hmm. Haircuts. Emerging franchise for haircuts, right? Everything I actually did in my role I was in the marketing department. I was a strategic marketer. Everything I did was actually customer success for the franchisees. If you look at it.
And you called it that?
No. But it was doing the exact same thing. It's making sure the franchisee is successful, making sure they understand value, making sure that we were looking ahead into the future and that we had success lined up for them. So it's all the same elements that I'd say you'd take over to, a traditional, again, I'd say the customer success manager, a little bit more traditional in tech, but it's the same motion, right? It's the same motion if you go and have any type of hospitality, right? I know you're a hospitality guy, but it's all customer success. It's making sure that your customers feel valued and they really have, you're really delivering a brand promise. So I think, customer success isn't just like, oh, you have some CSM because you bought tech and you're sitting there. To me, customer success is the whole organization. It's really, in my opinion, everything post-sale that you've got going for you.
Again, it's easy for me to look back on 17 years and be like, oh, that's where we screwed up. And there was a lot of those. Like, for us to even have this customer success part of the org nowadays, like, how important is it almost from day one to have leadership around the customer? Or does a company grow into having leadership around the customer, right? Like, yeah.
No, I mean, it's day one.
Is it?
It's every touch point.
So we messed up that bad. Got it.
I was one of your customers.
I'm sweating. I'm sweating. All right, keep going. Okay, cool. Yeah. So again, in that C-suite, chief customer officer, let's say we're generalizing around tech, software as a service, whatnot. There's an enablement piece for somebody that you're onboarding, keeping them engaged with the platform, showing value. And again, maybe this is hard to answer. Like, how would you structure that org? Let's say you're under $10 million.
How would I structure the customer success org? Well, great question. I don't know. I think it depends. I think for me, maybe it's less about the structure and the engagement model that you want to have. So I almost start there, right? What do you want that customer experience to be? And you structure around that. So there's tons of different roles. You can go to all the tech, all the tech companies have fancy titles when you get bigger. But at the end of the day, what do you want that customer experience to be for your business? And that should be unique to you. How do you deliver? How do you want the customer to feel? What are the things that you want to do? So I think at the very core is having a really good engagement model outlined. You start there, and then what roles and what type of people.
What does engagement model mean to you, real quick, high level?
High level, for me, the engagement model is, what are the different touch points that we're doing with the customer? What's the cadence of communication? What are the different value points that we're hitting? And really, to me, it's the whole piece of how you're working with the customer. And each one of them are unique. So when I say engagement model, there's like core things you should be hitting, but then everything you do around it. I mean, look, like, I hate the word cadence calls, but how often are you communicating with the customer? So having that really structured, right? Even if you're doing the QBRs, but when are you having a little bit more formal engagements where maybe other stakeholders need to come in? Obviously, there's the whole renewal play. If there's upsell motions, there's some of like, how do you do that seamlessly, are like things you do need to have, figured out and consistent across your team that you bring in. But I think the way you interact with the customer or how you maybe individually handle them, to me, should be unique to that customer. And I think this is actually where other people fail, is that they try to box people into their very templated only engagement model. Like, oh, I'm just going to talk with you this week and I'm just going to tell you about these 3 things, where it's like, if you really get to know the customer, how they want to be talked to, how, if you need to pull the throttle up on more frequency of communication, if they need to be project managed on their side, if they're like really on top of their stuff, where you should throttle back because they don't want to be project managed. So I think it's so individualized. And again, I've worked with some of the world's largest brands, and all of them, I'd say, have been different in how you really communicate with them and keep momentum forward. And so I think it's really being flexible from that perspective. And so if you're talking about structuring, it may be less about, oh, I need this many CSMs in formal roles. It's more the type of people you bring in, right? Like, for me, I need to have people on my team that are adaptable, agile, great communicators, strategic, but also folks that know how to push back at the customer, right? Like that, customer success isn't you just let the customer railroad you and you do whatever they want. So it's a partnership. It's a mutual partnership. So there's qualities in people I look at versus like
That
the
was where I
actual
was going.
roles.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what are some of those qualities? Like who is customer success for?
Yeah, I think there's a balance. Funny, I had a conversation with some folks about this yesterday. There's a balance between being strategic, having really good communication and rapport. And to me, there's a balance of those two. If you get someone that's too strategic, they don't know how to really like have any type of rapport with the customer, and then it's super awkward, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, get this person off the call with this customer. They can't even like tell someone how was your day. Then you can get someone that is so on the woo side, if you ever, the wooers of the world, and I've had a bunch that have reported to me in the past, and they're fantastic on the relationship side, and they totally fail on the strategic side, and they miss cues, they miss risk things that come up, they miss little things that are clear, like cues that the customers, that are like things that the customers obviously like trying to articulate, and you're just trying to like woo them all the time versus seeing like, hey, like they kind of yeah, they actually need you to like
woo. Like,
no, like you're just trying to woo
you're
them.
Doing great.
Yeah, you're trying to woo them so much that you've lost track of the actual like strategic pieces they need, or like honestly hand holding some of them needs. So I think there's got to be a healthy balance between someone that's an effective communicator and someone that's strategic, and strategic in the sense that they're a few steps ahead of the customer, right? And they can connect dots. Those like at the core, those are people I'm looking for.
Knowing what customer success has been in roles that you've played, then, coming to DevHub, I wrote down, I was like, oh, like, again, like customer success can play into other potential verticals, Is that outside of tech just called customer service, though?
It's, customer service. Shoot, you can be a marketing manager. I think any of the roles have it in them. Especially if you're...
I will just say this. I feel like tech makes customer success actually sound cooler, right? And then I think sometimes in more traditional, let's say, verticals, whether it's real estate or retail, it's like customer service is like, oh... You're just basically doing whatever the customer wants. You're taking the shitty return. You're taking.
Well, think
about it.
You're
just taking it from the customer without actually doing more. So like no one wants to do that. Yet in tech, customer success, again, there's like a whole strategic motion. There's whether it's an upsell, whether it's a renewal, whether it's like, hey, here's a new feature that's going to save you a ton of time that you're not even selling. Like you want the customer to win so much.
It's like you want them to be successful, but if you think about it, and I think obviously this is where customer success came from in tech, like what are you going to do? Put your development team in front of the customer and have them woo them? I think the other thing is most tech.
Sometimes.
Look, I'd say most tech, especially the industries we're in, it's not a set it and forget it tech play, and so you can't expect the customer, or if we're talking franchising, 500 franchisees to just sign into a platform and be like, well, here we go. I got this. And so there is the whole adoption and enablement piece that they need help with. They need help rolling it out across a huge network. There's the change management piece. So I think, even at the core, if customer success didn't exist, a lot of the tech would actually very much fail. And then on the other flip side, right, there's just marketing tech, it's changing every day. Marketing changes every day. So
it's wild.
They need partners that can help and grow with them.
Our next episode we'll do marketing.
Yeah, marketing side also. I don't actually think I have gray hair yet. At least my hairstylist says I don't. You can't tell with this blonde hair, but I probably should at this point.
No, marketing is a whole. Yeah, no, not today. We're not doing that one today. Okay, so customer can be just, again, I like to think about like, what could I have told myself at 22, 23? It's like customer means client, customer means potential partner, customer means like, what other some terminologies just to clean that up? Client, customer.
I don't even like the term client.
Really?
Not in our world.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
We're gonna need to change some stuff on that.
That's interesting. I feel like client means elevated.
To me,
Like
client,
a customer just means one of many.
no, to me, a customer buys a product from you. That's us, right? A client is, I'm a client of your hairstylist. You're giving me a, just more of a service, a lawyer. I'm a client of a lawyer. Customer buys products from us.
Here's what I wanted, honestly. So, because I keep writing down, the reason why I wanted to talk about the customer, again, besides having you, is, again, I think it feeds into brand, right? And again, like, obviously we're small, so it doesn't matter. But at some level, we have ambitions to be big. And, where I think a lot of tech misses is, again, what does the brand actually mean? And it's not just like, oh, we crossed 30 million in ARR. It's like, at some level, I don't care about that. Maybe it's because we've been around long enough. But how do we build a brand where it actually has a feeling? And again, from everything that I've read and more or less studied about brand, it is more about the feeling. And for us, unfortunately, that's going to come, or fortunately, is going to come from the engagement that our customers have through your department.
Yep.
But it starts from
the first sales marketing
call,
yep.
all the way through. But ultimately, though, the majority of the relationship post that will live within your part of the org.
Yep.
Right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's not crazy. That is true.
No, not crazy at all.
Got it. The touch of customer success to feed product innovation, to feed into sales marketing. Connect those dots for us. Like, how do you create that feedback loop within the actual org? So that the customer's asking for, whether it's a product thing or it's like, we keep hearing this message after they've been live for months, that they wish they can do blank, or they're so happy they solved for blank. How does that get back to marketing to put that into maybe an ad unit, whatnot? Like, how do you create those connections?
Well, one, you need to have no silos inside of your company. So I think if you've got everybody connected and talking, one that's number one is don't have silos, right? So if sales is siloed from engineering and engineering siloed from customer success, you're going to have a fragmented customer journey. To begin with, you're probably going to have not totally happy customers already because you've got different touch points and interpretations of what the brand is and the brand promise you're delivering. But I think to answer your question, how do you do an effective feedback loop? One, it starts with sales. Sales should have obviously already gotten like a baseline of what success looks like. What was the hook to get that customer in? Why did they buy from us to begin with? What is that value they're expecting? So there should be a really good foundation set there. And then I think when it comes over kind of the post-sale into the customer success more formal wing is where you really break those goals down into like tangible success plans. And that's where you start to uncover a lot of other things, right? You really get to the core of like how you're, either making their lives more efficient, which is a big one. Could do a whole thing on is efficiency plays, but and then you're getting that other feedback. You start to get the feedback of maybe what they don't have that they need. And to me, you can set up some really good internal tracking mechanisms from that. I think from the product side, I've done it a bunch of different ways from like, obviously tracking feature requests by customer, so, there's certain thresholds you can get to where you're like, this needs to be an absolute in the platform. Everybody's asking for it. It's a gap.
I'm just going to be really dumb, but is that like, you just put that in Asana or?
Yeah, you can do it. I mean, we use Asana, but you can have a ticketing system, or wherever you're capturing, customer information in a CRM. I've done it in the past where we're tagging features by customer and revenue impact, which is a nice way to kind of look at a product roadmap as you scale. But I think from a feedback loop back to sales, because it is super important, is really having that good sales and CS relationship, which if you look at a lot of companies, it's actually a poor relationship, at least in my experience. I've been lucky enough to have a pretty good relationship at some other companies I've worked at where sales and CS are very much attached at the hip. And so really good handoff from what they sold to what the CSM kind of needs to take over and monitor, the CS team, right? Manage or anything that's under CS. Yeah. And then a good feedback loop back, like, hey, I mean, like, yeah, hey, don't sell this is one of my favorite, right? Like maybe we shouldn't be selling it this way. So there's learnings there. Are we pitching things that maybe are hard for us to deliver because we don't want to fall on our face from a delivery standpoint. But again, I think it comes back to the internal relationships are just as important as your external relationships. So if you've got your sales team and CS team, very much in sync, they're going to be passing that knowledge back and forth, right? Sales will be saying, hey, here's a lot of what we're hearing that, competitors aren't doing well, right? There's the whole competitive takeaways. And then you've got, CS giving that feedback loop back up to the sales leaders or AEs on, either products they sold or gaps or ways they've pitched things or workflows that they've pitched that maybe need to be looked at a little differently. Or you sit down and say, hey, we've got enough requests of this. We got to change. We got to either change the platform, we change our service model in certain areas. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do it, but I think it comes back to having good communication internally. I think the companies that are siloed are the ones that you see some pretty catastrophic sales to CS handoffs. And again, it's that first 30 days of the relationship. So if you crap the bed there, good luck. Like that, first of all, that CSM has an uphill battle to try to mend that relationship, and then
go back to the customer later. And again, maybe that's what we experienced in those early years, which was, again, we sold it, we got them live, and then it was like to go back. It was like, don't touch them, leave them alone. Like they're good, they're paying their bills. Like, we don't.
It's the worst. That's where you get surprises, which I think we've seen. Right? Yeah. You don't have any relationship, then don't be surprised if you get a cancellation. You have no relationship. You're just a line item on their P&L.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was the customer suite with Jen Koen and myself, Mark Michael. Thanks for joining.